All right, we got that. Now we share screen. Now we go to that. I think we have it all. Okay, so we had a record 24 new members sign up to POE. So you'll see a big list of new members, which I think might be on, well, at least on the meeting tonight online. I don't see them in the room. So welcome to all of you. You see your names there. I'm not going to read them. Usually I read them off. They'll also be in the newsletter. So welcome all. Ask questions. We're very happy to have you. So tonight's speaker, I think, is also on the line. Is Kelly, are you online? You can unmute yourself.
I'm here. I'm paying attention. I am at the ready.
Thank you, Kelly. And Kelly very generously sent us a huge group of miniature orchids or assorted orchids. We have a very nice table of like 20 something orchids that Kelly sent to us at table. And her talk tonight, as I think you all know, is going to be on mounted orchids. So I'll come to that in a minute. And also, we have Lynn, as we've gotten used to, as doing the online part and tell. And then we'll do our best to do in-person show and tell here. We have a finished table, but some very nice plants. We're going to be auctioning off a $20 Sunset Valley Orchid gift certificate for the folks online. So you'll need whoever's collecting interested, and she'll do a drawing for that. And then in the room, we're going to raffle off one of the Sunset Valley Orchids. So if you're interested at the end of the night, do the raffle. That's one of the first things we'll do. Okay. And then for people in the room, they're selling raffle table tickets in the back. So buy raffle tickets. Also, there's an online discount from High Desert Orchids from Kelly. You use the code SFOS10 for a 10% discount on our website. AOS judging is going on. I don't know. Lynn, are there any updates for judging this month?
Yes, so this Wednesday we'll be judging April 6th, that's tomorrow, in Sacramento in conjunction with the Sacramento Orchid Society meeting. And then again on this Saturday at the San Francisco Orchid Society, I'm sorry, the Sacramento Orchid Society show in Sacramento. And then again on April 24th, we're going a week later because the 17th is Easter. So 3 judgings this month.
Plus tonight. So we have
right.
And at Filoli. So lots of opportunities to get plants judged. Also, I assume you're not going, but the AOS members meeting is in Florida, happening this week as well. So next Monday, we're going to do on April 11th at 7 p.m. by Zoom is the combo board meeting, show committee meeting, trying to take up less of people's time and trying to get it all done in one meeting and just be more efficient. So if you're interested in the show committee or part of the board or sitting in on the board, that's this Monday night. It's the same login as what we use for this, just at 7 on Monday following the meeting. Orchids in the park. We have a gazillion or maybe 10,000 postcards. So take postcards. I'm going to keep giving them out. They'll be in paper bags full of postcards. So Costco screwed up the order and redid it, and I ended up with 10,000 postcards. So we have lots of them to give out. Be very generous. Leave as many as you want. We're going to talk about, we started planning. We already have some vendors signed up. May 7th is the deadline for the vendors to apply. The ticketing is actually selling on not Eventbrite, but on Tito, which is from a European ticketing thing that gives us virtually no, they don't take any money from us as a nonprofit, whereas Eventbrite does. So we used Eventbrite for POE because they owed us like over $1,000 credit. So we got that back. So this time around, I decided just to save the ticketing fees. So it's on Tito, it's slightly different. In the May meeting, next month already, May 3rd, is elections for the 22-23 officers, so, and board. So I want to thank Eugen and Adam for stepping up to be on the board and to help us out. We had a few empty slots still. The slide coming up later. If anyone else is interested in serving in a leadership role, we still will need a treasurer-elect and a president-elect potentially next year. So because Faye and I will be doing our 5th year, so we're termed out after this, so someone else has to step up. The Floriad trip and beyond in Belgium is also the end of May, first week of June, which means Faye and I and Joe and Heidi and Mishi will all be in Europe. So we will not be here for the June meeting. A crash course as the new VP of how to run the meeting. So please support him and help him out so he doesn't live through this over and over again. So hopefully we'll get it better next time, and then it'll be super smooth when we're gone in June. But that'll be officially his first meeting as vice president. If you're interested in the trip, there's still spots on the cruise, on the Floriad trip. So there's still openings. Gold Coast Cymbidium is having their April 9th, Saturday only, 10 to 4, Redwood City. Bill's the contact. This is the one day Bill's not here. I don't know if anyone has anything else to say about it. No? Okay. Okay, so that's their show and sale. And updates for masking. So officially, we are not required to mask. I think in reality, people are. I'm not, because no one can hear me even without the mask. So I'll put mine back on. But technically, it's pushed down to us and it's optional. So, all right, we are recording. So I'm trying to move quickly, and then Kelly, I'll be handing it over to you in just a minute. So how do I get to the next slide? Orchid Masquerade. So POE, we update with more details at the board meeting, show committee meeting next Monday, but we had attendance and income at least as good as the previous 2 times. So 2019, 2020, we had almost the same kind of attendance, same kind of, if not, we made a little more money, I think, this time. I'm still waiting. Faye's still crunching final numbers of things. This was on the, we got a thank you letter for our donations to the Conservatory of Flowers that thanked us for we gave them $1,000 in plants. So they came and bought plants at POE from the vendors as a donation to replenish. And we probably will give them something again at Orchids in the Park to support vendors and them. This is the postcard you'll see out and about advertising the Orchids in the Park. The left side's the flyer for Cymbidium show on Saturday I mentioned. Same day, there's also the Sacramento sale going on the right. This is the list of the current board and officers. We have the Adam is the new vice president, taking over from Corey, but otherwise it's me, Faye, and Allie again. You're stuck with us for one last year. That's the slate. This is my intro for Kelly. So I think people may have Kelly first time as a vendor at POE. She was here at the far end of the gallery from High Desert Orchids, and she's the owner of High Desert Orchids. She started as an avid hobbyist, and like many of us, could not stop buying plants. And quickly, one greenhouse became 2, and she grows plants in a unique 3,000 square foot high bay industrial warehouse. Miniature plants with a particular affection for many of which many of which you'll see on the plant table. And there's the discount code again. So let me just double check that I have no other announcements. I think, yeah, those are all my announcements. So I'm going to go back and hand it off to Kelly to start her talk.
All right, cool. I suppose you probably want to see my face.
Yes, hold
Yes.
on. Let me,
There I am, sorry. My kids are getting to bed, so I apologize in advance if there's any screaming, but also my cat might come say hi. But thank you for the invitation. I enjoyed POE a lot. I'm still trying to get July figured out if we can come down for July, but I sure enjoyed POE. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
everybody's good. All right, then I'll just share my screen and go for it. I totally thought that you guys wanted to hear my artificial lighting talk, but don't worry, I'm ready to give Mounted Orchids. Next time you can invite me for the artificial lighting talk. Okay, so Mounted Orchids, here is my contact info again. Here's my email if you're looking for a particular plant or just want to ask a question about something, you can go ahead and email me. And then there's my Instagram handle if you want to follow me on Instagram. I post lots of tiny little mounted plants on there. And this lovely Angraecum ursianum is blooming right now out in my greenhouse. I actually had 3 of them flower this year, so that's very exciting. But just an example of a beautiful mounted orchid. There's your discount code, which Jeff has already provided for you. Thank you, Jeff. That code will be good through the end of April, so feel free to order anytime. So here's my warehouse space. We call it the High Desert Orchids Grow House. It's grow space plus warehouse. We grow all under LED lights. And this is our potted bench space. We have 8 of these benches. And this is where we grow the mounted plants. I have mounted plants hanging all around the greenhouse now, but this is our main grow space for the mounted plants. It's the same LED top lights down the middle, and this space is 16 feet long and it's about 8 feet wide. And then each panel is about 8 feet tall. So it's pretty neat little space. I also have a greenhouse in my home, and I grow mostly mounted plants in that greenhouse. I don't think I have a picture of it in this presentation, but we grow a lot of mounted plants. I really prefer growing the species. As Jeff mentioned, I like a particular affection for the miniature species plants, and most of those tend to grow best mounted for us. So here's the outline of my talk. This talk is largely for novices who have maybe not mounted a plant before or who are mounting curious, but not necessarily proficient. I want to talk to you about reasons why you should grow the mounted, everything that you're going to need to actually mount the plant. And then I'll talk about the types of mounts, types of orchids. There's a couple of videos through the end of the presentation demonstrating a couple of different types of orchids and how to mount them. And then of course, some growing hacks. Who doesn't love a growing hack? So why should you grow your orchids mounted? For the most part, our cultivated tropical plants are epiphytic. They grow on trees. They grow on tree trunks or on the twigs on the outer branches of trees. And we pot them as a matter of convenience. So most of these plants grow mounted. They mount themselves in nature. I like growing a plant mounted because you can keep an eye on the root system. We've given up growing in clear pots because they just attract algae. But nowadays, we just grow in opaque black pots at the High Desert Orchids grow house. And you can't see what's going on in that pot. You can see the first, centimeter or so of roots, but then once you get down into the pot, you can't see what's going on. So there could be a very pernicious root rot storm brewing inside of your pot, and you never know it. So with a mounted plant, you can just glance at the plant and see the entire root system and know whether or not it's healthy. And if there's a problem, you can immediately rectify it. It's also better for the wet and the wet dry cycle. Our epiphytic plants, they do like air on their roots and they like to dry out a little bit. So with a mounted plant, you definitely have a much faster dry cycle. Now that can work to your disadvantage too, especially here in New Mexico where the humidity is very low, but you guys in San Francisco don't have to worry about that as much. Perhaps it would help you to have a mounted plant in San Francisco because the humidity is so high. Plants don't dry out as quickly in pots, so it's better to have it mounted. And there's the cat. Also, it's better for longer term growing. Orchids didn't evolve to hop from tree to tree. They evolved to stay in one place more or less their entire lives. And so when you repot a plant and you put fresh, new, unadulterated media on it, the roots undergo a rapid pH change. So the media, as it degrades, becomes more and more acidic the older it gets. And then when you repot it into fresh media, that media is more alkaline. And so you undergo this big pH change. And I found that especially with the cattleyas, they just die. The roots just die when you put them in that new media. And so it's better for long-term growing to have a mounted plant because you don't have those big pH swings when you go and repot your plant. You can just stick it on a bigger mount when it outgrows its mount. So why shouldn't you grow an orchid mounted? The big reason is it's just not suited to it. So you've got a terrestrial plant like a PAF or a jewel orchid or probably one of your gorgeous cymbidiums that you guys grow down there. The less than ideal growing environment, that would be in New Mexico where our humidity is very low. I get a lot of my customers that ask me, can I grow this in my living room? And like, no, man, you cannot grow that in your living room. Good night, Maggie. Be quiet, please. That's my daughter. I'm sorry, guys. So if you have too low of humidity, or perhaps it's too breezy or whatever, you have a less than ideal growing environment, you shouldn't be growing mounted plants. For our artificial lights, you saw my grow house has the bench space, which has the potted plants, and then we have the light tunnel, which has the mounted plants. So it's very difficult to optimize the space to put both types of plants in one space. It ends up being that the plants up at the top, you know, the vertically growing plants get too much light, and then the plants down at the bottom, the horizontally grown plants, get too little light. So it can be difficult to optimize both. So we just had to split it up. We couldn't figure out a way to grow them both in the same space. And then there's also space concerns, of course, if you're growing in a small terrarium or, you know, just a small space. Orchids tend to like to grow on their neighbors. The roots tend to attach to their neighbors, or they attach to the walls, that kind of thing. So they can be a little bit more difficult to make behave. But I think that's what makes them fun. It's not necessarily a reason not to grow them. All right, so here's everything you need to mount. This is pretty simple stuff. You can get pretty much all of this at the hardware store and the pet store. Most important is going to be your plant. You're also going to need a mount. So I'll talk about all the different mounts you can buy, and then some kind of substrate. So that's the only specialty items that you're really going to need. Please go to bed, sweetie. You can drill a hole in the mount, fishing line, and then wire, and then some just cutting implements for all those things. So your types of mounts are going to be your biggest choice here. I get a lot of people that ask me, what's the best thing to mount on? My favorite is cork, just virgin cork. It's cheap, it's lightweight, it's very easy to cut, but you can mount on pretty much anything. It's really just the limit is your imagination. I know Andy's orchids, he uses these wonderful hardwood mounts. I think he uses mostly cypress. Maybe one of you guys know better than me, but you can use just about any hardwood, maple, oak, cypress, cedar. I've just got a few listed here. The hardwoods last a really long time. They don't degrade for 5 to 10 years, which is a really ideal length of time for a mounted plant. They're nice, you know, firm pieces of wood, you can drill a hole into it and your hook will stay in that piece of wood. Sometimes it gets a little wiggly with the cork. The only problem with these is they're generally unsustainable. It's kind of hard to find a big, beautiful chunk of maple, especially us city dwellers don't necessarily have access to that kind of wood. You don't want to buy any sort of treated wood, and you don't want any kind of wood that's particularly sappy, like a pine. There's a tree here which is absolutely abundant. It's the tree that pine nuts come from. We call it the pinon tree. And it's a very, very sappy, smelly tree. So it's very abundant here, but it's not a suitable plant to grow, or it's not a suitable wood. So this is my favorite. This is virgin cork. So it's a byproduct of the wine cork business. They plant the cork seedlings and they'll grow them for 9 years. And then the first peel of the cork, they peel off the bark. The first peel of the bark is considered unusable. It's just kind of a, they peel it so that the next layer is a nice, smooth, even surface. So that virgin cork refers to the first peel of the cork. And so it tends to be very bumpy and craggy, and it has lots of holes and nooks and crannies for your orchid roots to crawl into. And it's fabulous stuff. It's very cheap. It's a sustainable product because you're not killing the tree, you're just peeling the bark off. It comes in practically any shape and size. I really like this stuff. And the roots just crawl in and around it. I don't like it because it can be a little dirty. You have to often wash it before you use it. Just the roots kind of refuse to stick if it's too dirty. And then it can get a little weak and flimsy at times. So sometimes the hooks don't really stay in your hole that you drill. So I would recommend looking for this at a pet store or maybe an orchid greenhouse. It's a bit of a specialty product, but usually pet stores have it, but it's a little bit expensive. This is a more specialty product. These are called cork tubes. So they trim the branches of the tree and the oak inside rots, and then you're left with these tubes. So they make for some really interesting display pieces. The roots just kind of grow all around it, and then the plant can grow 360. So they're kind of fun. I don't like them because they're very thick. Like if you have it on a wall, it will stick out from the wall quite a bit. So it ends up being kind of a big plant, but they look really cool. Hi, kitty. Okay. Sorry, guys. Tree fern, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with tree fern. Also Osmunda fiber is very similar to tree fern. It holds a lot of water, so it's really good for like the bulbophyllums. I've got a little Sophronitis manticare mounted on here. Those plants that really like even solid moisture just kind of all the time. This is a suitable media for them. It's also naturally acidic, so it's good for epiphytes. We like the acidic media for our orchids. It also breaks down very quickly, so it becomes too acidic very quickly. So it's not really a long-term mounting material. I would say about 3 years is probably all you're going to get out of a chunk of tree fern. There's 2 different types. There's like a spongy tree fern, and then there's a much harder tree fern. And the hard tree fern is much harder to find these days. You can pretty much just find the spongy stuff, and the spongy stuff just doesn't last as long, and it breaks down really fast, and it's kind of messy to cut too. It just leaves this sort of layer of dust everywhere. But if you've got something like a bulbophyllum, it would probably like it. Nice even moisture. These things were kind of in vogue about 5 years ago. This product is called a cool log, but there's a lot of different permutations of ceramic mounts out there on the market. This product is like a tube, and then the end is sealed off. And so you fill the tube with water, and the idea is that the water sort of percolates out of the tube and cools the roots as the water evaporates out of the ceramic tube. So I've found that the roots don't really attach to these. They just don't stick for whatever reason. And then they're sort of algae magnets. You can see the algae collecting on the tube here. But they do make for a kind of interesting looking plant. Also, it's good if you're growing something that's a little bit cooler growing. You can mount it on one of these guys and it'll keep the roots 5 degrees cooler or so. This is a wood that is very widely available here in Albuquerque. This is actually a cactus. It's called cholla. I'm not sure if you guys have this. I'm sure in Southern California, but I don't know about in San Francisco. But it's just a horrible prickly cactus. And when the flesh dies off, it leaves this really interesting skeletal looking branch. So it's not a super long-term mounting product or mounting wood. It lasts only about 3 or 4 years and then it starts to break down. But it looks really cool. And the roots just really love to weave in and around those holes, and it just looks great. So whenever I bring these to shows, they always just like go super fast because people are interested in this look. But that's not really the point of this slide. The point of this slide is for you to look out in your backyard, go for a hike, find some interesting branches on the ground, and see what you can do with them. See how your orchids like it, and just find something new to play with. You really can't go wrong. Artificial mounts are kind of new on the market. There's plastic. You can mount on pretty much anything with texture is what I've found. EpiWeb is a artificial tree fern product. And then a buffer pad is something from the hardware store, which looks exactly like tree fern, or looks exactly like this artificial tree fern rather. I'll show you pictures of all of them. This is a common product from Thailand. You'll see a lot of imported plants on this plasticky stuff. It's like hardware cloth, and then wrapped around it is this woven garbage bag material. It's like the same texture as black garbage bags. The idea here is that you can't import wood. You have to heat treat any wood that comes into the country. And so these wonderfully clever exporters have grown their plants on plastic, and then they can import the plant directly and not have to take it off of the wood or heat treat the wood, because obviously that would kill the plant. So this is a pretty clever solution. But this is an interesting long-term solution. You don't necessarily have to worry about the pH changing. You don't have to worry about the mount breaking down. If the plastic attractiveness doesn't bother you, then go for it. EpiWeb is a product, I think it's manufactured in Europe, but it is a product made from recycled plastic bottles, and it's pretty remarkable stuff. If you can get your hands on it, it's pretty neat. It's a artificial tree fern, and it wicks water in pretty much the same way that tree fern does. It sort of wicks it and distributes it evenly across the mount. So it does stay wet. All of these little holes in it just are kind of like a sponge, and they soak up the water. So it's a product for a wetter growing plant like pleurothalids or something. This is a cute little Leptodes bankiana on here. There's also a matching product, artificial sphagnum. This gray stuff on top of the EpiWeb is called hygrolon. And this is a little bit harder to find, but it's like an artificial sphagnum, and it's just spongy. It holds water exactly like sphagnum does. So you don't need any type of media at all. In this case, you just use these inorganic medias. So if you're into the inorganic medias, this might be something for you. And then this is a floor buffer stripping pad that I bought from the hardware store and mounted a Dendrobium cuthbertsonii on. So it behaves very similar to the hygrolon or EpiWeb. It just has little crevices that hold water. So, I mean, use your imagination, find some interesting things and put some orchids on it. You have a great climate for it down in Southern California. So a couple of things you need to tie your mount on. You've selected your mount. You need something to attach your plant to the mount. So we use either tomato wire, which is this stuff, you can just get it for $5 at the hardware store. And it's basically like a bread tie, like a little twist tie, but it's just a length of it, so you can cut it to length. We like the tomato wire for small plants that will attach easily. So this is an Arangus punctata. It's just a little miniature plant. So there's not going to be a whole lot of weight to the plant, pulling the plant off of the mount. So one little twist tie is all you need. So if you have a little plant, a seedling, something small, something with not a lot of weight, this tomato wire works really well. Otherwise, you're going to want to use fishing line, and I'll demonstrate the wrapping of the plant to get it to stick to the mount. That's where you need 3 hands. But this is what we use. We use 12-pound fishing line. I definitely recommend the 12-pound. Anything lighter and it'll just snap when you go to tie the knot. And anything heavier, you'll be able to see it on the mount. So you don't necessarily want to see a bunch of plastic. You want to see these beautiful roots. So I recommend using the 12-pound. Then of course you need something to hold the water. Not all plants are going to want moss on them. You just kind of have to learn what your plants like. But some of them like the moss, like the more moisture retentive moss. We also use quite a bit of this stuff. It's called coconut core. And it's just the fiber that's taken off of the brown part of the coconut. And it's actually pretty moisture retentive. We like it for the angraecoids in particular, but I've also been using it for cattleyas more and more. It holds water, about the same amount of water as sphagnum would, but it's not hydrophobic like sphagnum is. Sometimes when sphagnum gets really dry, it's very hard to re-wet. And that's a particular challenge with mounted orchids because you just want to spray them with the hose and be done with them. You don't necessarily soak them with water. So we like this because it wicks the water right away. You don't need to worry about hydrating the moss before watering the plant. I also like it because it doesn't break down like sphagnum moss does. Often sphagnum will get kind of mushy and it'll grow algae on it, but this stuff, the coconut core, it doesn't at all. And the bugs don't like it. I really get a lot of fungus gnats in the sphagnum moss. I don't know if you guys have that problem, but that's one of my main problems. And the fungus gnats don't like this stuff. They don't eat it. The only thing that I want you to be aware of is when you buy it from the store or buy it online, it will be very salty. You need to wash it. You need to soak it for a day, empty out that water, and then soak it for another day, and then it's suitable to use. You really do need to wash it because it's quite salty. So this is the name coconut core fiber. I like this stuff a lot. I like it more than the sphagnum. I've moved away from sphagnum. A fun media to play with is live moss. There are some plants that really just like to live with moss. And I like moss because it talks to me. It tells me what my plant is doing. Moss will wilt and it will brown and it will react to a change in environment much faster than your orchid will. Your orchid isn't going to show signs of stress for a week or more. Sometimes, you know, for months, they'll just keep growing. They don't wilt. They don't yellow so quickly. They don't brown. You need to be more patient with orchids. But a moss, if I accidentally squirt it with something it didn't like, it's going to turn brown in the next day. Or if it gets too dry, it'll start to get crusty. So I like growing with moss. You got to have a wet growing plant, something that can sustain a live moss culture, but some plants really do like it. So this case is a little tube of hardware cloth with some sphagnum stuffed down inside, and then the moss just kind of spontaneously germinated and grows on this little mount. Okay, this is another kind of moss. This actually isn't moss. This is a Tillandsia species. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. Just Spanish moss, Tillandsia usnioides. I was just down in North Carolina and they had this growing in the trees. I just couldn't believe it. I definitely pilfered some and took it home. But we like it for the vandas, the bare root vandas. The humidity here in New Mexico, I keep mentioning, is very low. So this is a way to retain the moisture around those roots a little bit without stuffing the plant in a pot. This vanda is not going to want to be in a pot. It's just never going to be happy in a pot. So I don't have the humidity to maintain those roots bare roots. So I stuff a little bit of Spanish moss around it. to keep that humidity a little bit higher. And it also tells me a lot about how my plant is doing. Tillandsia's Nuoides, it will die if you get it too salty, or if the humidity gets too low, if you forget to water it for too long. So it tells me about the health of my orchids and how my culture is. And here's a little angraecoid. I think this is some Arangus species, which is enjoying some Spanish moss too. You do have to pluck it. You got to trim it. It'll take over if you let it, but you can definitely do some good works with it. Okay, here's a little bitty plant that sprouted some moss. I like this moss. It has little friendly round leaves, and this moss stays very cropped. It doesn't overtake the plant, but there are types of moss that do overtake the plant, and you have to kind of watch for those. I have no idea what either of these moss species are. One of you guys might. But this one, I call it a miniature sphagnum, and I have never met an orchid grower that doesn't have this moss in their collection. It just looks like a very, very tiny sphagnum, and it's got these sort of jagged needle-like leaves, and this stuff will just take over your mount. So if you can get rid of it, it just ate this little Arangus punctata here, but you can squirt it with a little bit of diluted alcohol, dilute it to like 50%, and squirt the plant with that, and it'll kill the moss, and you can just kind of peel it off. And if it starts to germinate again, just squirt it again. Here's another eaten plant. Oh, so sad. So you gotta keep on that moss. It'll take over. Okay, wire. This is whatever you want. We like to use 17 gauge aluminum wire. It is easy to work with. It's malleable. You can manipulate it with your hands. You don't necessarily need pliers. Anything heavier, you're probably going to need a tool like pliers. For the bigger mounted plants, you're going to need a heavier gauge wire. I recommend the galvanized 16 gauge. So you do want galvanized or aluminum, otherwise it's going to rust, and one day your plant will just fall off because the hook rotted away. Okay, and then of course, the plant, the fun part. There's a couple of different types of orchids, obviously, and their growth habits. Well, a couple, okay, try thousands. But the main breakdowns are monopodial and sympodial plants. So a monopodial plant means a one-footed plant. It has 1 foot that it puts on the ground. So all of the new leaves are going to emerge from a single growth point. And this is an example of one. This is like a little miniature Vandaceous plant. So all of the leaves emanate from this one stem, and that stem has a single attachment point. So your Phalaenopsis, your Vandas, any sort of Neophonetia or Angraecoids, those are all going to be the monopodial plants. The alternative is a sympodial plant. So that means multiple feet. The plant has growths emanating from all over the place. So with Cattleyas, it's usually one direction. With the pleurothalids, they just kind of grow all over the place. Dendrobiums on Sydney, they're more like Cattleyas. They grow mostly in one direction. It's kind of a predictable direction. This is a cute little Leptodes bonkiana, which is mounted on a single packing peanut. How cute is that? You can mount on anything, see? All right, so some important things to remember. After you have selected your plant, you need to orient the plant in a way that its next growth is going to attach to the mount. So you want to find where the new growth is coming out, and you need to put that part on the mount. So I recommend mounting a smaller size plant. It's just going to be easier on your hands and easier on your blood pressure to mount a smaller plant and let it grow into its mount rather than buying a big giant Laelia purpurata and trying to mount that thing, because it's going to flop off. It's going to be difficult. Plan for growth. You want this plant to stay on this mount for 5 to 10 years, ideally. So you need to plan for, I recommend usually about 3 years of growth, before you have to do anything to the plant, before you have to remount it or figure out your next plan. Pick a mount and substrate that's suited to the culture that your plant likes. So if you have a bulbophyllum, you want to find a media substrate amount that is going to be more moisture retentive. If you have that big, beautiful Lele purpurata that doesn't need as much water, you want to have something that's going to dry out more quickly. So probably just plain cork. You have to be aware of if your plant likes sphagnum. Not all plants like sphagnum. The roots don't like it for whatever reason. So figure that out. Ask around, see if anybody else in your orchid society has grown it. And then I recommend, well, I should put this at the end, but when you're watering your mounted plant, you want to water it in a way that wets the entire root system. So what I recommend is watering it twice. You want to water the plant once and then walk away for 15-20 minutes or so, and then come back and water the plant again. So you want to water the plant in a way that it's going to stay moist for 15-20 minutes or so that it doesn't lose the water out of the roots before the plant has a chance to drink. Okay, so biggest problem I get when I'm training new employees about mounting is, what is my plant doing? Which direction is it growing? How the heck do I know where to put it on the mount? So some plants, like this little platystele on the left, they grow in many, many directions. Platysteles and most pleurothalids just kind of put out growth in sort of a 360 pattern. So how do you know which direction to mount it on? I tell people to look for the solar panels. So a leaf is like a solar panel, and a plant puts its leaves where it's going to get the most light. And so you want to look for the tops of the solar panels. So you want to find the most solar panels and orient your plant so that the most solar panels are facing your light. So you wouldn't want to mount this plant upside down, for example. The cattleyas, or the monopodial plants, you can often tell which direction they're going just by looking at the sequence of growths. So the smallest growth is going to be the oldest. That's this growth on the right here. And then the largest growth is going to be the newest. So you can assume that the next growth is going to come out where the second oldest growth is, right? Or no, the second newest growth. Okay, that was confusing. Let's try another picture. These are two cattleyas. This is a new growth coming out here. So I can tell that this plant is going to be growing this direction. So I planted this plant on the edge of the mount, growing inwards. So I'm planning for growth. I'm planning for 3 years worth of growth. I don't want to plant this plant so that this new growth is right on this edge here. I want to plant it so that it's going to have room to grow for the next 3 years. This is another example of a new growth. You can see that it's bright purple. It's smaller than the other ones. It doesn't have any new roots growing out of it yet. So this is a new growth. This is what you want to look for. And this is an ideal time to mount when you see these new growths coming out. The growth is out. You can tell which direction it's growing in, but it hasn't produced any new roots yet. So this is an ideal time to mount. Here's another example. I mounted this one at the bottom of the mount, planning for the plant to grow upwards. So oldest to newest, this is where the newest growth is going to come out of, and it's going to grow up the mount for the next 4 or 5 years. Okay, here's an example of a plant that I mounted in the wrong direction. This plant was mounted probably before it started growing, and then the plant decided to grow the wrong direction, or I mounted it the wrong direction. I don't recall. But anyway, the roots are growing out into space. So they're not going to be attaching to my mount, and this plant is going to grow more slowly as a result. Plants always grow faster and happier when they have something to grab onto. So this plant is still growing in the wrong direction. I never fixed it. You could potentially fix it by taking it off and turning it around, but at this point, it's already got nice roots already attached, so I just left it alone. But when you have a plant that hasn't produced a new growth yet, You can sort of peel away this papery caterpillar here and you'll see a little eye that looks like an upside down U, and especially on the cattleyas anyway. And you can mount that plant, that eye facing the mount. That's the best way to do it. Okay, so here's your technique. You're welcome to screenshot this. I will pause here for a second so you guys can take a picture if you want. Step one, pick your orchid, pick your mount, find something that's, going to be suitable to each other. Drill your hole, blah, blah, blah. All right, we'll just go through all these steps. Pick your orchid, pick your mount, size them up. So you want to plan for that growth, plan for 3-4 years of growth. This plant is way down at the bottom and it's going to grow up this mount. So it's a long, skinny mount. And I like this size, it looks good. So we're going to move on. So we're going to drill a hole. It's important that you drill your hole before you start mounting. How many times have I forgotten to drill my hole and then I squish my plant while I'm drilling my hole? This is our little secret wire wrap. Not really so secret, but you just make a little U and you squish it down with your pliers, and then you can pull it through that hole that you just made. And then this little loop at the bottom gets folded up. And what I like to do is I like to take my pliers and sort of pinch both ends of the wires. So the little loop and then the part that's poking out the other side, I like to pinch it with my pliers, and that just makes sure that the hook is nice and stable. That's another reason I really like cork, is because it's actually quite pliable. So I can squeeze my my wire and it holds the cork really well. Pick your substrate. We're going to use sphagnum moss here. So I moistened this moss so that it's flexible, but it's not soggy. So if I squeeze it, it's not going to drip any water. It's just, moist so that it's flexible. So put your plant on the mount and then add your glob of sphagnum or whatever media you're using. And now what I want you to pay attention to here is the air roots versus the roots that were in the pot. So the air roots, particularly on cattleyas, are easy to identify. If you're familiar with phals, they're easy to identify. The potted roots are usually more of a translucent looking. They look wet. They're often green or brown. They don't have this bright white color to them. So you can tell the air roots because this bright white color. It varies a little bit depending on what kind of plant you've got, but usually it's pretty easy to identify. So you want to cover the roots that were in the pot. Those roots that were in the pot are acclimated to living in a pot. If you take them out and expose them to air, lower humidity, big wet dry cycles, very often they will die. And similar to the aerial roots, if you were to stuff those aerial roots into a pot or stuff this glob of sphagnum that I have here on top of those roots would very likely die. They're acclimated to the air, they're acclimated to lower humidity, they're acclimated to dry, wet cycles. So you want to respect the roots and cover only the roots that were previously covered. This is an important step. Your plant will acclimate much faster, and in the long run, you will have a happier plant. Okay, here's where you need 3 hands. This is the important step. So get your wire. I have my thumb, the substrate, the plant, the cork, and then my forefinger, pinching everything together. And then I have the fishing line in my other hand. So I've just switched my hands, and I have my thumb, the substrate, the plant, the cork, and then my other finger. Oh, and I have the fishing line pinched down there too. And so here's what I do is I wrap the fishing line around my left hand. I'm right-handed, and I wrap it around these 3 fingers so that I can hold it nice and taut. And I have a video of this. I'll show you this several times. So wrap it around with your fingers, hold it nice and tightly, and then you have everything pinched in your left hand, and you can start to wrap. So you really only need like 3-4 wraps depending on the size of your plant. You just wrap it a couple of times. It's really, really important to wrap both the roots as well as going through the rhizome of the plant and pinching that rhizome down. If it's a particularly heavy plant, you might need to do several trips over the rhizome. Because if you don't get that rhizome part attached to the mount, the plant will just flop right off of the mount. It won't be able to hold itself up. Okay, if you have a pleurothallid or something, you want to weave through those leaves, and I'll show you a video of that. Okay, so 3 to 6 passes with the fishing line, that's really all you need. If you go more than 6 and your plant is still floppy, you've done something wrong. You should probably undo it and try again, because that's really all you need. Give it the wiggle test. So I have the fishing line still wrapped around my left hand, my 3 lower fingers, and then I have the prime end of the fishing line, so the uncut end of the fishing line pinched down with my thumb. And so I have everything held down and I'm wiggling my little plant and making sure it doesn't wiggle. You want it to be nice and firm and no wiggle. It's really important. Your plant will establish much faster if there's no wiggle. Holding tension. And then here's my super secret special knot. So if you pull away anything from this presentation, let it be the super secret special knot. This is a knot that Andy taught me, Andy Phillips. He wraps the fishing line 4 times. So instead of just doing a square knot where you wrap the fishing line once and then you do another knot on top of it, you do 4 loops of wrapping. And I'll show you this in a video later on. And then you do another square knot on top of that. Hello, cat. Come on. Don't you know how important this is? Okay, and then it will hold the knot, hold the tension on the knot so you can tie the top knot. You don't need somebody to hold their finger on your knot so that the tension stays. Okay, and there you go. Bask in the glory of your beautifully mounted plant. It is done. Okay, here is a little video. And I will play this for you. This is a little Masdevallia strobelii. So it's a small plant, it's immature. I'm looking for the new roots because that's going to indicate which direction my plant is growing. And I'm looking for the solar panels. I'm looking for the most solar panels at the top of the plant. Also sizing up the size of the mount, making sure that there's room for growth. I'm going to get my sphagnum moss. That's a moisture retentive media, which Masdevallias like. And I'm wrapping the front of the roots, and I'm not going to put any moss behind the plant. So you want your roots to attach directly to the mount. If you put moss or something in between your and the mount, it will never attach to the mount. It'll just grow happily in that little glob of media. So you want to put your roots directly on the mount. Okay, sizing it up, looks good. The plant is going to grow that way, and the roots are going to attach directly to the mount. So here I've got everything pinched in between my thumb and my forefinger. I'm wrapping it around my lower 3 fingers, and then I'm going to wrap it 3-4 times. 1, 2 over the media, and then I'm going to go through the leaves. Doesn't really matter. I mean, about half of the leaves would be nice. Looks like I went through about 2/3. 1 more wrap over the roots. 4 total. Wiggle test. No wiggles. Very good. It doesn't move, so we give it a snip. And then here's the super secret special knot. Don't drop your plant like I did. 1 wrap, 2 wraps, 3 wraps. That's all you need for a little plant. And then I like to pull it over to the side like that. So instead of tying the knot right in the middle, there tends to be like a little cavity that's produced just by the shape of the cork. And I find that the tension stays a little better if you move the knot over towards the side where it's solid over here. And then you can tie the knot a little bit tighter that way. So I can put it down, it doesn't budge. And then I tie the top knot on top of that, and it's done. So just give it a little snip and your plant is done. So that took what, under a minute? That's all you need. Okay, so here's another one. This is a Phalaenopsis. This is a monopodial plant. We're all pretty familiar with the Phalaenopsis. So I have this one growing in a pot with sphagnum. There's not a whole lot of roots that we're growing in the pot. So you don't really need to worry about aerial roots versus potted roots. Phalaenopsis grow pendulously, so you want to mount it so that it's going to grow down. The leaves are going to grow down. They don't grow up. So mount your plant the direction it's going to grow. I'm inspecting the roots here. It's not really a whole lot of roots that we're growing in the pot. Plan for growth. Phalaenopsis don't really produce keikis very much. I mean, there are some species that do, but Stewartiana doesn't really produce keikis. So I'm just accommodating the roots here. I don't necessarily need to accommodate for a lot of little plants coming out. Putting a little glob of moss just kind of near the base of the plant. Give it a little more moisture, but I'm not going to cover all of those aerial roots that we're growing. They just don't need it. Just a little bit of moss. Phalaenopsis like to be a little bit more moist. There's my fishing line. I wrapped it around my fingers. And now with the sympodial plants, you don't have, or with the monopodial plants, you don't have a rhizome to, we don't have a rhizome to pin down. So we have to go below the plant and above the plant and make sure that those roots get attached firmly. So probably 4 wraps here will be enough. One on the bottom, one on the top, another one on the bottom, another one on the top. Scoot your plant. Sometimes they tend to scoot over towards the right. You gotta make them behave and come back in the center of the mount. There we go. That's all you need. Give it a wiggle test. So pinch it with your fingers. And, oh, I guess we're not going to give it a wiggle test. Always do the wiggle test. There's my super secret special knot. 3 wraps. Pulled it over towards the side. Holds the tension a little better. And then another top knot. There you go. And so those aerial roots are just kind of hanging out there. They don't really get attached. They'll probably grow eventually into the mount. There's the wiggle test. Okay. It passes. Phew. All right. And then I think I have larger dendrobiums. So this is a plant that's going to get quite large. This is some Latoria dendrobium hybrid. I don't remember. So this plant is both large and also sympodial. So it's going to grow in a lot of different directions. So these are the plants that I find people have the most trouble with. In this case, I am just going to pick the direction that the most growths are growing. So it's still going to grow in all kinds of directions, but I'm just going to pick the direction that most growths are going. So you can tell those because they're shiny. They're new. They're a little bit red colored in this video here. There's one down here. So I'm just going to mount it so that those 3 growths in the back are going to attach to the plant. Now there's no room for growth on this mount, so we have to pick a bigger mount. It suits it now, but in 5 years, it'll just completely dwarf that mount. So this is pretty good. I would still maybe pick a little bit bigger. So we've got the 3 growths going towards the mount, 1 growth going away. That's not ideal, whatever. Some sphagnum moss, Latoria dendrobiums, they do like to be on the moist side. Sizing it up, I'm looking for air roots. Latoria dendrobiums don't always have the air roots, mostly potted roots, covering pretty much all of those roots that were in the pot. This one can be tricky because the plant has weight to it, so the plant can pull itself off of the mount. So you want to make sure and secure it well. pinning everything down. I'm going to wrap it around my fingers. Make sure it's nice and taut. Everything's got to be really tight. And this plant is already sliding to the right, you can tell. So you want to stop in the middle before you get everything too tight and scoot it back. And I bet I'll do that in a second here. Scoot it back towards the middle. And another wrap. So as long as you've got it nice and tight and the plant has mass to it, 3 wraps, that's all you need. I might do one more if I were to do this again. I might do one more towards the top, but that's an extensive wiggle test. No wiggles. Snip and super secret special knot. 1, 2, 3. Have you learned the knot yet? Are you going to try the knot? Okay, good. And then there we go. Snip and bask in the glory of your beautiful plant. Fabulous, fabulous. I think there's one more video. Nope, that's it. Okay, so here's your tips, your things to review. Going from the pot to the mount, you need to cover the pot growing roots. The aerial roots, they're going to be fine. They can grow out in the air. But if you have roots that were in the pot, you need to cover those roots. And similarly, if you're taking a plant that had aerial roots and you're repotting it, don't stuff those aerial roots in your pot. They're going to die. It's really important to mount your plants at the right time. So you want to plant them. I showed you a couple slides ago, those little cattleyas. They had the new little stubbies coming out. They had the new little growths, but they hadn't produced roots yet. So you're going to have an easier time establishing your plant as well as mounting it without hurting it if you mount it just before those new roots come out. So that can be kind of difficult to determine when exactly your plant is going to root out. But if you've grown it for a couple of years or you know somebody in your orchid society that has grown it, you can ask, hey, when does this thing start to grow? Not all plants like moss. All of the ones that I showed you in my videos, I used moss for all of those. But not all plants like the moss. I'm thinking of like the Sophronitis cernua. That thing never grows well with moss for me. A lot of the angraecoids, they don't like moss. Vandas, they don't like moss. So you're going to have to be aware of what plants will grow well with moss and what just want to be directly on the mount. And then, of course, don't worry if it looks bad. You'll get a lot better. It takes some time and you need 3 hands to do this. So don't worry if it doesn't work out the first time. Just try again. It's an excuse to buy another plant and play with more plants, which is what we all want, right? And I think that's it. That's me. So I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any, or you can also email me here.
Hey, Kelly, this is, sorry, go ahead. I'll wait. Okay, I'll just jump in. Hey, Kelly.
Hey.
Hey, thanks so much for this talk. So great. And so just as a novice, it's just really nice to get like down to basics. So I just want to make sure I understand, if I have a little cattleya and I want to mount it, I'm essentially orienting it so that new growth is growing into the mount.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And which seems maybe counterintuitive because you think like, I'm not giving it any space. Like if I was potting it, I would want to create a bunch of room for it to do that, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Well, the mount is the space. I mean, these things don't need to be enclosed. They want to grow all over the place. And I think you'll find that you have trouble getting them to behave and keep their roots on the mount. They just kind of want to grow everywhere. So yeah, there's space on the mount as long as you're planning for growth, but you don't need to worry about like squishing it or anything. They put their their leaves where they want them to be.
Got it. So they'll figure it out.
Yep.
How would you
Thank you.
mount a Vanda?
How would I mount a Vanda? So like a standard Vanda,
Yes.
like a Thai hybrid? I probably wouldn't. Those tend to just grow like bare root, but the way that I've seen pictures of them growing in situ is usually they'll grow kind of on a branch. So the branch is like horizontal, and then the Vanda is just kind of sitting on top of that. And then the roots are growing on the branch as well as underneath the branch. So you might just put something kind of horizontal and then stick the base of the plant directly on that. You know what I mean? And then the roots will kind of just grow below it and then also somewhat on the branch. But Vanda roots prefer to kind of grow down. They don't necessarily like to grow out as much as a mounted plant would like.
So you're, I related to the comment about like how things can end up being kind of floppy on the mount. And because one of the issues, I have like this Dendrobium lewisi, I thought maybe I saw one in the background of one of your pictures or something maybe, but it has like kind of like it kind of comes out from a small point, and then there's kind of a little brush, a bunch of roots that grow out, but it doesn't, seem like it's, I think on a previous mount that I had that rotted away, it was maybe attaching better, but the current mount, it's really floppy and I don't really have a good way to get it.
So there's like airspace between the roots and the mount is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's kind of what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So I might take it off and try and get that fishing line fed through the rhizome. So in between your leaves, I bet what's happening is you've got a bunch of fishing line or whatever you're using to attach it below the plant, and then the weight of the plant is just kind of pulling it away, and that's what's created that airspace. So I would say maybe you don't even need to pull it off, but just try and feed your fishing line or whatever you're using in between the canes a little bit. Okay.
Great talk. I don't know if people who are fisher people, but to keep the line nice and tight as you make the knots, put a little spit on it and
Yeah,
it
that
will
works
tighten.
too.
That's how people who fish and they attach the swivel hooks or whatever they attach with the fishing line. Just wrap it around like you did, and then put a little spit on it, pull it, and it will get nice and tight.
Yep, she's right.
I have a question, Susan here. Thank you very much for the talk. I thought it was wonderful.
Well, thank you.
I have Japanese maples and a redwood tree in my yard, and I've contemplated using them for mounts. Some of the branches when they've gotten trimmed. Do they need to sit for a while to dry out before you actually use them for orchid mounts?
No, I mean, you might experience, if you're growing in somewhere really humid, you might experience some molding on your mounts, but it's usually not an issue for the orchids. No, I don't usually bother drying them out because you're just gonna get them wet and humid again anyway. So I don't think you need to worry about it.
Okay.
Some people will bake them like a low temperature for a day or so, but I never really bothered.
Huh, okay. Have you ever tried manzanita for mounting orchids?
Manzanita, no, I have heard of that. No, I never have.
I think Candies uses some manzanita.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think
uses
that's
it,
where I've heard of
and
it.
It's awfully smooth, and practically everything that I've gotten that have been mounted on it, I end up remounting because it doesn't grip. The roots don't grip on very well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Roberta, is things that have texture are way better than smooth barks. So I'm thinking like aspen. I don't know if you guys have that there, but it's a very, very smooth bark, and that just would not be suitable. And it's the same reason those ceramic mounts never work for me, is because they're very smooth.
I've actually, where I am, bottle brush is is a really common tree. I had a neighbor who was taking their tree down. You know, I drove around the corner and loaded up the back of my car. It turned, bottle brush is great.
Neat. Yeah, that's a great example of just taking advantage of what's available.
As an example of the fact that Phalaenopsis grow down, I just got back from Singapore, and my son-in-law, in the house he's renting, there were probably 100 species Phalaenopsis growing on the fence all on tree fern. And most of them, the growing part of the plant was 6 inches below the edge of the mound.
Yeah.
They'd been unattended for 4 or 5 years. And so I had a happy 2 weeks of remounting lots and lots of Phalaenopsis.
Aren't you nice?
That sounds about like my ideal vacation.
Yeah, well, they do get a little rain over there,
Yeah.
2.2 meters a year.
Wow.
Wow.
There was a question in the chat. I think, Diane, did you get your question answered about mounting on fern live? You were asking about live tree fern, or what were you asking?
I was asking about live tree ferns down the side of my house.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, I've seen some pictures of that. And in South Florida, they grow plants in ferns. They'll grow they'll put the plants kind of in the little pockets that are produced by the fronds that come out.
Right, that's what I was thinking of. Just a
Yeah,
few-
I've seen that. I don't know why they don't grow it more. I've only seen a couple of plants grown like that, but totally. I mean, why not?
Give it a shot.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize there was a chat going on. There's a bunch of questions here. There's a question about the slide with the recycled material. I will pull that up and then answer other questions. Let's see here. This is, oh gosh, where is it? Here we go. EpiWeb, Hygrolon. The Hygrolon I don't believe is a recycled material, but the EpiWeb is, and it's a little bit hard to find. You might have to get it out of Europe. I believe that's where it's manufactured, but sometimes you can find pieces of it. I think Josh's Frogs has it, and Glass Box Tropicals is the name of the company. They both sell the EpiWeb.
If you mount something on EpiWeb, you'll never get it off again. So just be aware of that.
This is true. It is not, you don't need to mess with it.
Something that I find that helps when mounting on cork is to tie a knot to begin with on the front, one of the front edges of the mount.
Yeah, that's a
And
good idea.
Leave a 3 or 4 inch tag.
I've seen a technique with mounting platyceriums, the what do you call them? The ferns. What do you call those things? The antelope ferns? That's
Yeah,
not the right word.
Staghorn fern.
Staghorn ferns, that's what it is. I'm sorry, I just lost the word. But where you take 4 nails and do 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, and then you put your fern in the middle there, and then you sort of do an X across the 4 nails to get the fern on there, rather than wrapping around the entire mount. I haven't tried that yet, but
If you're gonna mount staghorns,
Yeah.
don't use light fishing line.
yes,
Yeah, I use weed whacker line.
no kidding. That's
And when they get to be 40 or 50 pounds, they break that.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Okay, I see Paul asked, any other orchids besides phals that grow down pendulously? I would say a lot. I'm thinking a lot of the dendrobiums, like the longer cane dendrobiums in particular, will just start to grow down. I would say probably plan for most of your species plants to grow down. The cattleyas, they tend to grow upwards, but a lot of the dendrobiums, they'll just swoop down. So, I mean, how do you figure that out if it's going to grow down or not? You can Google the name of the plant and see how people are growing it. See if they've got it staked growing upwards, or see if it's kind of flopping over in its pot. See what these plants are doing.
Parkinsonianum is certainly a classic. I mean, down is the only way it grows.
Yeah, exactly. So you just got to do a little research to see what your plant is going to do.
How
Okay.
often are you watering in your desert greenhouse?
Well, we have it climate controlled, so it's about 85% humidity throughout the year. But the mounted plants, I do water a little bit more. And I see Cassandra asked a question about watering too. I would say yes, you're going to need to water your mounted plants more. And I water my mounted plants probably about 3 times a week during the summer, maybe a little less during the winter. But they are going to dry faster. That's that faster wet dry cycle. And they need to be watered for a longer period of time, because they're not going to have that media that keeps the water around the media and lets the roots absorb that water more slowly. So they're just going to have the water that you give it. They're not going to get any water from the media. And so yeah, you're going to have to water more often and water for longer. And here's another comment about tree ferns. Absolutely correct. It is not a sustainable material, tree fern. You have to kill the organism to harvest the tree fern. So that's another reason I really like cork, is it's a sustainable material. You don't need to kill the tree, but with tree fern, you do need to kill the organism. So it's becoming a harder to find product and more expensive. And of course, sustainability is always something to be aware of as orchid growers.
All right. If there's no other questions, we're going to move on to show and tell.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Kelly.
Of course, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right, I'm going to sign off. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right. So let's see. We're going to do, while we're in the room here, let's see if I can do the show and tell here and then go back to you, Lynn. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay, so let's see if you guys see what I see. All right. Do you want to bring the plants? Let's see how we can do this. Have it. Wait, let's see. Have it focused over here. Can you guys see that? Can. Okay, so if you move closer, closer. Okay. So you can see the flowers.
Yes, we can.
So this is a what? Dendrobium. Is there a tag for this one? It's a dendrobium. It's a Laturia dendrobium, I think. But that's all I can tell you. All right. Here's a tag. Who brought this in? Let's see. Tanya. Okay, let's see. It's Dendrobium Little Green Apples. Green Elf by Convolvulata. Okay. Couldn't move that. All right. This is from Larry and Roy. Hello, hello. Half Delanatii, Colorama by Haim. Those are the main varieties. So if you come over, there you go. I know this is a Leptodes politinokoi, also by Larry and Roy. Very nicely bloomed, pretty nice size
Beautiful.
for this plant.
Wow.
Nice job. I was gonna say it's a really big bicolor. They're usually real miniatures, so. You want to do yours?
Dendrobium capitulifolia. It's from, and I grow it in an intermediate greenhouse.
What was that yellow flower?
Right?
What was the gold flower he just showed?
Adios.
We've lost the sound.
Holding the
Lost sound, Jeff.
Jamelia arachnanthe, which is extremely fragrant, and it's from Ecuador. So probably it's pollinated by one. Another one from Madagascar, Bracum leonis. Both of those are found intermediate.
We're not hearing any descriptions.
Was it Jamelia arachnanthe?
Can't hear anybody.
Can't hear, Jeff.
One minute.
I also know then they can hear us.
Text to your friends in the room.
Okay, Jeff, that is holding now the Renanthera vietnamensis, which must be from Vietnam, up in the mountains because it's a cool grower.
When you say cool grower, does that mean you grow it outside?
No, it means I could grow it in an unheated greenhouse.
I see.
Okay.
Okay, it's your turn, Lynn. We're gonna, can you
Okay.
hear me? We're gonna turn over to you.
Okay, let's see if I can do this. Screen.
There you go.
All right.
Oh, poop.
We got a slideshow.
Yeah, I've got the wrong, I have two screens. That's my problem.
Ah,
We've got the right screen, it's just the wrong view.
It's my puppy. What are you seeing?
I mean, you've got it in, like your presenter view, you need to put it into the slideshow view.
What do you see
San Francisco Orchid Society Show and Tell.
with my notes?
Yeah, with your note, with the individual slides down the left-hand side, and that's what needs to go away. It's just you need to.
Yep.
The
I can't
button
get
might
back.
be F5.
slideshow also works sometimes.
I can't get back to full screen. That's my problem.
It looks like a full screen here. It's just that it's not the slideshow.
I know, I've got the wrong screen.
Stop the share and restart it.
Good idea.
It's okay, we're all with you.
Sorry. No,
No, that's now you've got the puppy.
We just see a picture of Sasha as a baby.
isn't she cute?
She's so
Yes,
cute.
she is.
Adorable.
I want it to be on screen one and I can't get there. Okay, do you see it now?
Yes.
Well, it shows your SFOS show and tell, but it also has all the smaller images
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
left side.
Just scroll.
Lynn, in the menu bar, click slideshow at
Yep,
the very top. Slideshow. No. To the left.
yeah, I went to view slideshow.
Slide, no, just slideshow.
Just slideshow,
Just slideshow.
that one.
Now, left-hand side from beginning.
There you are.
There
you are
you
awesome.
go.
Thank you, thank you. Was that Ron? Thank you. So do you see it full screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, so. So I'll start back at the top. So there's lots in bloom. So we have a really gorgeous virtual show and tell table. We have 61 beautiful orchids from 21 contributors. I think that's the most contributors we've had. The order in which I show them is the order in which I receive them. So here we go. This is Tyler Albrecht's Paphiopedilum micranthum. This is an unusual albiform. On the left is a typical micranthum, and it happens to be an award photo of Tyler's Clone Spring Kiss that he just got an AM on earlier this month. Micranthum is a mostly lithophytic or terrestrial path found in southeastern China and Vietnam at elevations from 1,000 to 5,000. So it grows in soil made up of clay and deteriorated limestone, which is packed into cracks in the rocks on steep slopes where the clouds and mists are prevalent. So it likes good humidity, good air movement. It blooms through the spring and summer and likes to be kept moist and cooler than the others in the Parvicipulum group. This is a gorgeous, unusual flower, Tyler. Tyler shows us another Paphmicranthum. This is the variety Eberneum. Hibernium means white or ivory. This is typically a somewhat smaller flower than the regular micranthum, but it is spectacular. The flowers are about 3 inches wide. The pouch is what it's all about. It's about 3 inches long and it dominates the flower. On the left is the plant with 2 open flowers and then a close-up of each. This is Tyler's Paphiopedilum venustum, a cool-growing, shade-loving terrestrial from Assam, India, and the southern slopes of the Himalayas up to about 4,500 feet. It grows in humus at the base of cliffs, near streams, or in detritus in the crotch of trees. It can grow under various light conditions, but the dark, beautifully mottled leaves that you see on the left appear at their best when it's grown in more shade than is acceptable for most other species in this genus. Andrea, oh gosh. Andrea Lodate shows us Phalaenopsis katrina, which she bought on the SFOS member plant sales table. I couldn't find any information on this hybrid, but Andrea says the plant loves the view from her kitchen window. Phalaenopsis are great windowsill growers, and if yours doesn't want to rebloom, it probably needs more light. Just a little tip. Lisa Perla shows us 2 cymbidiums, which are thriving outdoors in her garden. This clear green one with a burgundy spotted lip, and this pink one, which looks like it's just beginning to open with 2 inflorescences. Judy Carney shows us this gorgeous blooming of Dendrobium moosme, which is a primary hybrid of Dendrobium amabile by Thrissiflorum. They're both cool to intermediate growing species from China and India, respectively. I'm sure the only reason we did not see this beautiful orchid on the display table at Sonoma's show last week is that it's just too big to move. So it's great to see these photos of it. It looks like Judy has 7 or 8 spikes on it, which hits the applause meter. Hooray, Judy. Not exactly a windowsill candidate because it is big, but certainly a showstopper in the greenhouse where it gets bright, indirect light. This is Gary Barg's Cattleya ludemaniana, a beautiful species from Venezuela, where they're generally found from sea level to under 3,000 feet of elevation on north-facing slopes of the Central Coast. So it's a warm to intermediate grower. Gary says the 6-inch flowers have a pleasant floral fragrance, and the plant has been recently divided. It's named for Mr. Ludemann, a French orchid grower in the 1800s. Isn't that lip amazing? This is Gary's Cattleya luminosa, which is a cross of an aurea form of Dowiana with Laelia tenebrosa pine knot. We can see that the tenebrosa contributes the overall flower shape and the color of the sepals and petals, and the Cattleya dowiana contributes that amazing lip. Gary grows this in crushed granite, which does not decompose, which means he does not need to repot it until it overgrows its container. He has divided it many times. He says it grows like a weed with a lovely fragrance. Gary shows us this eye-popping Cattleya. It was formerly Sophrolalia cattleya, jewel box. It's a complex hybrid of 6 different Cattleya species, and let's give Gary a round of applause. These are really beautiful, well-grown plants. Jewel box was registered in 1962 by Stewart Orchids, and the clone Dark Waters was first awarded in 1965 to Fred Stewart in Oakland, with 2 flowers on 1 inflorescence. Most recently in 2016, Dark Waters was awarded a CCE, a culture award, with 130 flowers on 30 inflorescences, so it has come a long way. Like many hybrids, Jewel box has what we call hybrid vigor, and it can thrive in a range of light levels from medium light to bright indirect, and also a range of temperatures, though intermediate is probably ideal with nighttime temperatures into the high 50s. Gary said it's his largest plant by the sheer number of blooms, and the flowers are not fragrant. This is a stunner, Gary. This is Larry Roberts' bulbophyllum, which he purchased 2 years ago at POE from Sue Hamilton, and was labeled bulbophyllum repens. This is the first time it's bloomed for Larry after a short dry winter rest, and he found that it doesn't look like the bulbal repens photos he finds online. I copied a couple of them to the right, and it does not look like those. Someone on a bulbophyllum Facebook chat with Larry suggested it might be bulbophyllum propinquum or bulbo micropetalum. The raceme is a couple inches long, and Larry says it smells faintly of overripe fruit. So if anyone can provide a positive ID, please let Larry know via chat or contact him directly. It would be great to get a good ID for him. Dale Martin shows us Bifrenaria inodora. Bifrenaria is a genus of about 20 species, and generally the only one we see in collections is Bifrenaria harrisonii. This Bifrenaria inodora is a Brazilian species. It's found in montane rainforests at elevations from sea level to 3,100. So it's a medium-sized, hot to cool growing epiphyte, has 3-inch waxy, fragrant flowers. And in Dale's photos, we can see that the tri-lobed lavender lip is covered with fine hairs, presumably to keep out undesirable would-be pollen snatchers, to save the job for the real pollinator, which is perhaps a bird who can bypass those hairy guardians. This is really lovely. This is Dale's Papilionanda or Vanda Omar Padron. It's a gorgeous hybrid registered by Robert Fuchs in Florida in 2011. And the only award on it was given to Robert Fuchs's plant in 2020 with 6 flowers. I think Dale's plant has that beat. It's a medium-sized Vanda, so it could be a windowsill candidate if you can provide it warm temperatures and highlight, but what great color. Dale's Phale amboinensis. This is a species. It's the yellow or flava or yellow form. It's crossed with Phale yaphone siangor. I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly. This is an unregistered hybrid with stunning color, beautiful flower presentation. We all have grown Phale hybrids that we found at POE to Trader Joe's, but this amboinensis cross is much fussier, harder to grow, well worth it when it's grown like Dale's. Dale's Paphiopedilum labaudianum. This is a primary hybrid of Paph hainaldianum by Philippinense, and the hybrid was registered to Mr. Labaudy in 1895, so it's an oldie. It has earned 34 AOS awards since AOS started the judging program in the 1930s, and these flowers have just gotten bigger and more beautiful over the years, as has the photography. The first award in 1934, there's no photo for it in the system. The first awarded photo is the one on the top right. This is from 1972, a faded color slide, which Ken Jacobson then digitized for us in 2006. Dale's flowers are stunning with petals 5 inches long and clear, saturated color and markings. Lovely. This is Tom Pickford's Catleanthe Mine Gold, a cross of Laelia brigeri by SLC Jewel Box, and the result is this stunning, almost iridescent 3.5-inch flower. Tom grows this in a cool greenhouse with night temperatures into the low 40s and summer highs into the 90s, so it has true hybrid vigor. Laelia brigeri is a charming little rapiculus Laelia, we see it on the right, which has been used as the seed parent to bring down the plant size. So Jewel Box is a mid-sized plant and a good windowsill candidate, excuse me. This is Tom's Dendrobium thersiflorum, a regal dendrobium in the Callista section. It's found in Southeast Asia from India to Vietnam. This plant is over 2 feet tall with pendulous inflorescences and racemes of 2-inch flowers. It's a cool growing species found in humid, mossy forests. It wants to be watered sparingly through the winter months and reduce fertilizer until the initiation of new growth in the spring, then full on watering and fertilizer until fall. Air circulation and bright light are essential for blooming as well as this. This is Tom's Dendrobium golden aya. This is a primary hybrid of 2 Asian species, Capilipes and Aphrodite. It was made by a Japanese hybridizer in the 1980s, and Roy Tokunaga of H&R Orchids provided a number of seedlings of golden aya for a meeting in Sonoma 4 or 5 years ago, and Tom has grown his seedling into this robust, mature plant. He has a number of inflorescences on it. He grows it cool, and like most dendrobiums, the pot should be small for the plant size. They bloom best when they're pot bound, and they do not take kindly to repotting. So be sure there are plenty of new green root tips before you repot any dendrobiums, and then it may be best to just move it into a slightly larger pot without disturbing the roots any more than necessary. El Presidente Jeff Harris shows us Dendrobium Mountain Magic, which is an unusual primary hybrid of two high elevation species from New Guinea, Dendrobium pseudoglomeratum and Cuthbertsonii, resulting in this very sweet little mountain magic hybrid. Jeff got it from Tarzan in Florida last year, and this is his first blooming. He grows it with other Cuthbertsonii in his cool fog house area outside under the deck in his backyard. This plant is growing beautifully. The leaves are pristine, and it looks like new roots are emerging. This is very cute. Let me take a sip here. This is just Epidendrum coriifolium. Coriifolium meaning with leather-like leaves. It's a species found from Mexico through Central America down into Panama in cloud forests or wet montane forests. So it wants dappled light, cool to intermediate temperatures with very good ear movement and lots of humidity. Year-round water, somewhat less in the winter. Jeff got this in 2018 from Stuart Menaker, labeled as, quote, Vanda hybrid. So he put it on a shelf in the warm greenhouse, and this is the first year it's bloomed. There's several color forms of Epicoriifolium, including a green albiform, some with distinct pink in the lip. This is a nice, robust plant, and the flowers look like little singing monkeys to me. Jeff shows us Elisera Donald Halliday, which is a complex hybrid with Odontoglossums, Miltonias, and Brassias in its heritage, resulting in this fairly compact plant with big, long-lasting flowers. Smile Airy is the only awarded clone, awarded in San Diego in 2012 with 4.5-inch flowers. We can see the pink picotee on the edges of the sepals and petals, and the frilly lip with purple-red blotches, and a yellow crest to beckon the pollinator to come hither. These are great windowsill candidates. Jeff got his from Norman's Orchids in Southern California. Judy and Steve Lipson show us Masdevallia lucernula, the name meaning something like the small lamp Masdevallia. The Lipsons got this from J&L Orchids a couple of years ago, and it's beautifully grown with clean leaves and a very nice blooming. The 2-inch flowers are just eye-poppingly orange, and they're tubular with short tails or caudae, which project forward and converge in front of the small opening. It's a species from Peru. It's reported to be very rare, and as far as is known, it's been collected only once from an area at 6,900 feet near Mayobamba, Peru. Applause for Judy and Steve for this beautifully grown, unusual Masdevallia. This is K-clums and Angraecum pseudofilicornum. There are over 200 species of Angraecum spread throughout tropical Africa and the related islands. They're best grown mounted and with high humidity, moderate shade, and ample water while they're in growth, less when they're not in growth, but never allowed them to dry out for long periods. They're epiphytic and monopodial. Pseudofilicornu is found in northern Madagascar in humid, mossy forests as a medium-sized, warm-growing epiphyte. K's is grown in an intermediate greenhouse. The flower is about 2 inches wide by 6 inches long, including the nectary, and they're long-lasting and fragrant flowers. The flush of apricot on the sepals and the nectary are very lovely. This is K's Arangus fastuosa, also a species from Madagascar. It's a dwarf plant, as we can see it beside K's 6-inch ruler. It has extremely large flower, or 2 flowers in this case, over 2 inches plus the long nectary. The flowers are long-lasting. They're lily-scented at night because it's pollinated by a night moth. It's a twig epiphyte and a low elevation plant, so it prefers warm temperatures, shaded or medium light. So this would also be a great windowsill candidate. This is K's Phalaenopsis mannii. There are 83 species of phal spread throughout most of Asia, east of India, and the Pacific to the Philippines and South Australia. While they can grow in pots with bark medium like our hybrids, as Kelly just said, These species are best mounted on slabs of cork bark, like Kay's is here, because of their pendant growth habit, and so they do not hold too much moisture in the leaf node, which can cause the crown to rot. It likes medium light to shade, high humidity, and a drier winter rest that helps initiate spring blooming. The flowers are 1.5 to 2 inches. They're waxy, they're long-lived, and they're scented like a mandarin orange. This grows in Kay's intermediate greenhouse. This is Kay's Tridactyl bicaudata. Tridactyl is an African genus of about 47 species. The name refers to the tri-pronged apex of the lip. The plant on the left shows the inflorescences peeking out of the leaf nodes, and the closer we get, the more charming it is. The flowers are less than 1/2 inch, but very intricate, as we can see in the close-up on the right, with wild fringes on the lips, side lobes. The flowers are scented, and Kay also has this growing in the intermediate greenhouse. Roberta Fox always shows us some unusual species, and tonight is no exception. This is her Ophrys speculum, one of the terrestrial bee orchids native to the Mediterranean area of Europe from France to Turkey. Roberta says this one's her favorite. If you were a male bee, you would find her absolutely irresistible. Just look at the complexity of this flower, all designed to trick the male bee into pseudo-copulation. The petals and lip are wild, they're furry, they're boldly colored. And then at the top, the dorsal sepal forms a canopy above those 2 prominent pollinia, which the frustrated male bee will bump into in his frenzy. And even though he's frustrated, it won't stop him from trying again on the next flower with those 2 pollinia attached to him. And that's how pollination takes place. Pretty remarkable evolution. Roberta's Ophrys cerastes, another Mediterranean bee orchid. The common name of this one is the wasp-bearing orchid. So apparently this one is wasp pollinated in the same act of trickery as the last one we saw. The flower is about 1 inch with a number of color variations. These terrestrials need a full dry rest from the time they finish blooming, which is about now, all summer, no water all summer, until they put up their first growth in around October, and then a mild, wet, very wet winter. So the opposite of the orchids we're used to that need a dry winter rest, this needs a dry summer rest. The new growths arise in the fall from a small corm or tuber, and a good source for these is the Tarzan group in Florida. They offer them in the summertime, just before they sprout, so you need to keep watching for them. This is Roberta's Serapias lingua, which has many color forms. She shows us 2 of them here. It's also a Mediterranean terrestrial, including Europe, North Africa, and Turkey. All of these Mediterranean terrestrials are dormant through the summer and fall. Some are dormant already, and even the blooming ones are showing signs of dormancy with yellowing leaves. Roberta starts watering in October, once the nights have cooled off, and she stops watering as the foliage dies back. All of these not only tolerate, but they require our cool winters when they need lots of water. This is Roberta's Maxillaria sophronitis. The flowers are about 1 centimeter, 1/2 inch, but they are brilliant. The plant will produce a few flowers on and off at any time, but it produces a flush bloom 2 or 3 times a year. It's native to Colombia and Venezuela at elevations from 2,400 to 4,800 feet. It grows vigorously on Roberta's Costa Mesa patio. It started out in a 4-inch basket, moved up to a 6-inch basket, and is far outside that one now. It seems to do quite well with most of the growth and roots just hanging freely in the air. This is Roberta's Polystachya paniculata. This is a diverse genus of about 130 species, but what they all have in common is the nodding flowers, which open downwards. Paniculata is a worm-growing species native to much of Western and Central Africa. The contrast between the massive orange flowers, which are about 1/4 inch each, and the bright green panicle, or the branching inflorescence, is very dramatic. This wants medium light, so it could also be a good windowsill candidate. Dave Hermeyer shows us Dendrobium delicatum apple blossom. Jay Fall says this is a natural hybrid, which means that it occurs in nature. Dendrobium kingianum by Tarberi or Speciosum. It's found in Queensland and New South Wales, Australia, on rocks and boulders and cliff faces. And he says the flowers are wintergreen scented. It appears to come in a variety of color forms, from white to deep magenta to pale yellow, but Dave's apple blossom is as lovely as a blooming apple tree. The flowers are about 3/4 of an inch. It likes bright indirect light, cool to warm temperatures, so good outdoor grower in our area. And Dave also shows us the white form of Dendrobium delicatum. It looks like he grows this outdoors in San Francisco, where it is thriving. Dave shows us one of the beautiful nobile type dendrobiums. If you can identify which nobile it is, please let Dave know by chat or message him directly. Nobiles are characterized by pushing inflorescences out the nodes of mature canes. You can see the flowers coming directly out of the cane. The flowers are always large and showy. They're up to 3 inches in some varieties. Nobiles need a decided winter rest from water and fertilizer to ensure a good bloom season. And the yellowing of the leaves in the fall is the sign that it's time to start the dry rest. If they have too much water during the winter, it'll cause them to put most of their energy into developing keikis rather than flowers. I learned that lesson the hard way. Jennifer Pulaka shows us the stunning cochleanthes, which she bought from Equihenera when she attended the World Orchid Conference. Equihenera shipped the plants back to the US after the show, and they arrived in great condition. There are currently just 4 species in the genus Cochleanthes, while a number of others, including the commercially popular Cochleanthes amazonica, have now been moved to Warwickzella. So if anyone knows the name of this species or hybrid, which it may be, please let Jen know via chat. She says there's 7 flowers all around the perimeter. This is really beautiful blooming, Jen. The contrast of that yellow shield with a hot purple lip is very gorgeous. This is Jen's Cymbidium Jennifer Woldridge. I actually found, Jen, that there's an L in the hybrid name. It's a complex hybrid made by George Hatfield, and Hatfield Orchids received the first award on it in 2013, an AM of 82 points. 2 other clones have been awarded subsequently. The contrast of the very saturated burgundy lip with the apple green sepals and petals is very stunning. This is Jan's Paphiopedilum fanaticum crossed with Wasner China Moon. It's an unregistered hybrid and it has not been awarded. The judges might like to take a look at this, Jen. This is Jen's Chrysocentron gokosingii. I love to say that, gokosingii. Chrysocentron is a small monopodial epiphytic genus with 5 species occurring from the northern Himalayas to Borneo. Gokosingii is named for a Malaysian orchid enthusiast, Mr. Gokusing. It's found in Sabah, Borneo, in mossy forests at elevations around 5,500 feet. So that tells us it is cool growing. The blue-gray flower with a violet lip interior is unique and always a delight to see when it blooms. Tom Pickford received an AM on his when it bloomed last year, so I got to see it up close, and it's even more enchanting in person. Valerie Mountain hasn't sent photos for a long time. Welcome back, Val. This is her Laelia Jungiana, and to my eye, it is the queen of the Laelias. Val acquired it at POE in February 2020 from Andy's Orchids. This is the 2nd time it's bloomed for her. This time it's been in bloom since the end of February. It lives on her unheated sun porch, which gets very bright light and gets pretty warm during the day. She gives it a mostly dry rest November to February with just a bit of water weekly and regular water during the rest of the year. The flower is over 5 inches across, very large for the size of the plant. It's also very fragrant during the day, especially, she says, when she first opens that door in the morning. That is gorgeous. This is Val's Cattleya nobilior crossed with Cattleya walkeriana. And this hybrid was registered in 2003 by Japanese grower Sawada Orchids as Cattleya Brazilian Jewel. So that's the name of this hybrid. This is a beautiful primary hybrid of the 2 species. Val says this came from the opportunity table in February 2020, and she gives it the same care as the Jungiana we just saw, so it gets a winter rest. They sit next to each other on her sun porch. This has been in bloom since February with 4-inch flowers. which are also very fragrant. It's the third time she's bloomed this, and it has 3 flowers this time. She says it's hard to photograph it because it wants to grow down over the side of the pot, which Lilias do love to do. They love to climb out of their pots. This is Val's Dendrobium pendulum, which she acquired at POE in February 2018 from Andy's Orchids. Val grows this in her house in a sunny east window and gives it a dry rest in the winter with just a bit of water weekly. It's been in bloom since mid-March with flowers a little over 2 inches across. It's not fragrant, but it blooms reliably each year. You can see it's blooming on leafless canes, which is why they say to never throw out a dendrobium. They can look dead all winter, and then these cheerful blooms erupt. And then you see in the back, you see the new growth for next spring's flowers. This species is widespread in Southeast Asia at elevations from 4,100 to 5,300 feet. So it's best grown intermediate and a good windowsill candidate as Val grows it. Jan Anderson shows us Chysis bractescens. Chysis is a genus of 10 epiphytic species found from Mexico to Peru and Venezuela. As we can see, the pseudobulbs on the right are cigar-shaped and they're very heavy, so they must store a lot of water and nutrients in them. The plant is often pendulous growing, with the inflorescences arising from the side of the old pseudobulbs. The 3-inch flowers are fragrant, they're waxy. They last about 2 to 3 weeks. It requires somewhat less water in the winter to ensure blooming, and it can be grown mounted to accommodate those pendant growths. Intermediate to cool with medium light. Jan's Lycastes Michael and Sharon, hybridized by Makita Abu in Japan in 2010. Many Lycastes are reflex back and they have narrow segments, but this flower is quite flat and full. And the color really is eye-popping, especially in contrast with that foliage. I don't know who Michael and Sharon are, but this is a complex hybrid. If anyone knows the story, please let us know on chat. This is Jan's Catleanthe or Laleo-Cattleya fire dance. And the clone Patricia has received 6 AOS awards. It's a complex hybrid registered in 1984. It's about 2/3 Aurantiaca, the word Aurantiaca meaning orange colored. It is indeed. This is Susan Anderson's Trichopilius suavis. This is a medium-sized, warm to cool growing epiphyte occurring from Costa Rica to Colombia in low mossy woodlands at elevations from 3,100 to about 5,000 feet. We can see they have flat compressed pseudobulbs, and the inflorescence arises from the base of a newly formed pseudobulb. Susan grows this in her intermediate greenhouse with night temperatures around 58 degrees. They do not like stale medium, so yearly repotting is recommended for Trichopilias. The flowers are about 4 inches and they have a heavenly floral scent. This is unusual. This is Susan's Campylocentrum robustum. There are 84 species of Campylocentrum spread through tropical America, but we rarely see them in anyone's collections. Susan's is very well grown. Let's hit the applause meter for Susan. Robustum is found mostly in Peru and Brazil as a medium-sized epiphyte which climbs along its mount, which we can see it doing here. The flowers are less than 1/2 inch, but what's really interesting is the arrangement of the flowers in opposing rows on either side of the inflorescence. You need to see this in person to see how cool it is. This is Susan's Dendrobium griffithianum. These are 2-inch flowers. They're on a pendulous inflorescence, which arises out of a node of the cane. They have a spicy floral scent. It's found in India, Myanmar, and Thailand, high up in trees at around 1,500 feet of elevation. So it's a worm grower and it prefers filtered, dappled light. This is like seeing a neon light when you walk into Susan's greenhouse. Vincent Pietro Martir shows us Phalaenopsis Chia E. Yenlin, a complex hybrid out of Taiwan, which is prized for the variegated leaves. Vincent bought this at POE 4 years ago and grows it indoors in a bright north-facing window. The flowers are about 4 inches and they have a nice flat round shape. This is Vincent's Catleanthe or Laleo-Cattleya Trick or Treat crossed with a laughing boy. It's a Sunset Valley Orchids hybrid which Vincent bought at Tiny Jungle last winter. This is the first time blooming with 3 orange magenta flowers and a magenta lip. It's about 3 inches across by 2.5 inches high. Vincent grows it indoors on a south-facing kitchen window with diffused light. These colors really pop, don't they? And this is a reed stem epidendrum, which Vincent bought as cuttings on Craigslist 3 years ago. And now he has multiple stems flowering. He makes clusters of small 1 inch across carmine red flowers with yellow centers. He doesn't know the hybrid name. If anyone can identify this, please let Vincent know via chat. He grows it outside in half sun, half shade. And this is Vincent's Masdevallia coccinea alba. The clonal name Blanca was given to it when Golden Gate Orchids, Tom Perliti, had it awarded an AM in 1996. Vincent says his is a well-established 20-plus-year-old plant that he's had to break up and make divisions of. This year, all 6 of his divisions are flowering profusely with pure white flowers, which are about 1.5 inches across and about 2.5 inches long. This one is the mother plant and it has 10 blooms. Vincent grows it outdoors in shade with some early morning light. This is a species from Colombia where they grow from 8,000 to 11,000 feet. So it's definitely a cool grower. This is lovely, Vincent. Glenn Finch shows us Cattleya intermedia variety Sander, which he purchased from Ellen Koch of Gold Country Orchids at POE this year. Intermedia is a hardy species from the Atlantic coast of Brazil, where it grows within a few miles of the coast at low elevations. It usually grows on low trees or in the upper branches in bright dappled light conditions. It's also found on rocks and on the ground where the sand dunes are covered with trees and brush. It can be grown cool to warm with year-round water, but less water in the winter months, and it is often fragrant. Glenn's Vanda suavis is a synonym for Vanda tricolor variety suavis. Glenn purchased this plant from Santa Barbara Orchid Estate. This is a gorgeous but large Vanda species. It can grow several feet tall. It's from Java and Bali, where it grows as an epiphyte in very bright light. The species is said to be a warm to hot growing plant. However, Glenn's greenhouse is kept at 50 degrees minimum in the winter, can get down even lower in a very cold night. So they're adaptable as long as they're kept quite dry during cold spells. They like lots of air movement. And one caveat, this species has been found to be virused from a variety of sources, both domestic and foreign. So if you have a Vanda tricolor, Vanda suavis, it's a good idea to virus test them so you don't spread the virus to your other plants. They are gorgeous. Glenn Finch shows us Hocoglossum subulifolium. Hocoglossum is a terete-leafed Vanda-like genus with most of the 15 species coming from Southeast Asia. Subulifolium is found in primary forests at elevations around 1,300 to 2,700 feet. It's a small, medium-sized, cool to cold-growing sympodial epiphyte with a pendant stem, making it a good candidate to be mounted, as Glenn's is here. The crystalline white flowers are up to 1.5 inches, and they're just elegant. Javier Perez Sanchez is a first-time show and tell contributor, and we're delighted. He shows us Laelia Santa Barbara Sunset Showtime, which he purchased from Santa Barbara Orchid Estate, and he grows it mounted. This year it has 28 flowers. Nice job, Javier. Let's hear some applause for that. This is a hybrid made by Santa Barbara Orchid Estate, registered in 1980. Jim Rose from Cal Orchid says the clonal name Showtime is particularly appropriate because it always blooms for the Santa Barbara show. It's said to be cool to warm grower, but Bill Weaver of San Francisco has a 2015 Culture Award on his plant with over 50 inflorescences, and he grows it outdoors in the Bay Area. We haven't seen Bill's plant recently, probably because he would need to rent a van and a forklift to bring it. Javier also shows us Floriferous Dendrobium Specio Kingianum, which he purchased at the 2018 Santa Clara Valley Orchid Society auction. This is definitely a cool outdoor grower, but it should be protected from rain, and watering it while it's in flower will shorten the bloom time. This is a primary hybrid of 2 Australian cool growers and robust growers as well. Bright and direct light and good air movement. Javier also shows us Dendrobium speciosum equinox, which he purchased at Santa Barbara Orchid Estates in 2018. This is one of the parents of the Specio kingianum, which we just looked at. Again, this is a cool growing, robust Australian species, perfect for growing outdoors. And it blooms best when it's pot bound. So don't feel guilty if you don't get around to repotting it for a few years. Flowers are very large, very yellow, although there's also a kind of a creamy white form, and they're very fragrant. It needs very bright light, short of burning the foliage, and good air movement. Javier also shows us Laelia anceps variety Vecchiana. He got a 5-bulb plant from Tanya Lamb in 2012, and it's grown up a little bit. Now it covers the whole mount. This blooming has 32 flowers, and the colors are beautiful and defined. There are many varieties and color forms of anceps. This is one of the loveliest, I think. This is a species found from Mexico to Honduras, a perfect outdoor grower in the Bay Area with bright indirect light. It wants water all year, but much less in winter. So it should be protected just in case we get any heavy rainfall. We're getting near the end. This is my Orchis italica. This is a Mediterranean terrestrial, like Roberta's Ophrys bee orchids. It is deciduous from about now to October, when the little grape-sized tuber will begin to show new growth, and that's when I resume watering it. I purchased this from Tarzan Group in Florida. I grow it in my cool greenhouse down to about 40 degrees in winter. Orchids are called the little man orchids. Can you see the little man in the cluster, the little men with their arms and legs? And then the hooded dorsal sepal and the lip on the top are his head and his face. Just makes me smile. This is not my plant. A fellow I worked with before I retired 8 years ago hunted me down 2 weeks ago to send me this photo of his so-called Hano Hono orchid, as it's known in Kauai, where he lives now. He says he squirts it once a week with a hose, feeds it when he remembers. I've been waiting for mine to open so I can send him a photo of mine. I've had it since 2017, and I was really proud that it has 12 buds this year. So I don't know whether to be discouraged or inspired by Gary's plant. Next, we have our one entry to the monthly pet parade. This is our friend Peaches, who we've seen before. Here she's helping to water Kay's orchids by staying out of the way. And after seeing all these gorgeous orchids, if you feel a need to shop for some more, maybe you underbought at POE, here are 3 upcoming opportunities, in addition to the Cymbidium sale that Jeff talked about earlier. Sacramento Orchid Society's annual show and sale is this weekend. Great displays and vendors, including Cal Orchid from Santa Barbara, is always there. Then the following weekend, Mary Nesbitt is having her one-day spring sale, Saturday, April 16th in Bolinas. She has great variety and also really great prices. And then the following weekend, April 22, 23, and 24, so it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is a spring open house at Gold Country Orchids and Path Paradise in Lincoln. So you can visit their websites if you want more information, and you can buy more orchids and send me more pictures. Thank you. And that's it.
Lynn. Thank you, Lynn.
Welcome.
Excellent job as always.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So we have 30 minutes to spare.
Okay.
We are, I don't, Corey, are you online? I don't, Corey. Okay, so I didn't see them. I'm asking room as well as online if you're interested in one of the $20 Sunset Valley Orchid gift certificates to let us know. The people in the room will do it when we do we'll do it first here. The people online, can you go ahead and just put it in the chat, in the text, okay? And I'm recording this and I'll look at it at the end and deal with it when we're all done. Okay, so I see Eugen and Lisa. Anyone else interested? Please put it in the chat. Okay, we're going to sign off the Zoom now. Otherwise, thanks everyone. Hope to see you next Monday night at the show committee or board meeting, or until next time.
I have a couple of show and tell.
Oh, okay. Was this Carolyn? Okay, do you want to, can you share your screen?
How about that? This is a Papharianum.
You need to click share screen.
Where do I find
Let's
that?
see. Hold on, let me see if I can do it for you. How do I do this?
Bottom, bottom of your screen.
Oh, I see it. I didn't know.
But will that work if she's just
It's
showing her
working.
picture?
I
Okay,
think it's working.
but she doesn't have it on her.
No,
computer.
She's holding up the
She's
plant.
holding the plant
Oh,
for you to
oh,
see.
you were sorry.
Yeah,
You were
so
doing
it's
it
not,
right.
no,
You-
share screen, no.
Okay, sorry.
All right, well, you can see it over there. Anyway, it's a path that I got at POE. And I've been looking for one for 5 years since I
Oh,
saw.
Fairyannum. Yeah.
Yep, Papharianum, and it's interesting because the back side is as pretty as the front side. Can't get any closer.
Carolyn Fisher.
That one, and then I have
Put it
a,
in front of your camera.
okay, let me see.
The little hole on the top of your laptop.
Yeah, well, that's where I started with it, and you guys said you couldn't see.
No, we can.
All right,
They didn't get it right. There you go. Beautiful.
this is a dendrobium. And I misplaced the tag when I was entering them in my logbook. But I grabbed the plant because it just opened yesterday. But I've never seen one with these that little bulbous bulbs before it opens. Anyway, those are my 2 plants I wanted to show.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Carolyn. Sure. All right. Anyone else have any announcements or anything before we turn the Zoom off? Going. We're turning it off. We're going to finish up in the room. By the way, I did go check on the judges. There were 8 awards. The plants were huge, and they said they'd send us pictures for the newsletter.
Cool.
Yes,
Don't
and
forget the
Pierre won
Cymbidium show,
awards.
Cymbidium sale this weekend.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Don't know how to respond to these.